Welcome to this week's chapter review of Martial Magic and Muscle, Chapter 72. Mash Bernadette and the Giant's Chain. This week's chapter starts us off where we previously left off 2 weeks ago, with the giant multi-headed titan approaching the school, and the first thing we get to see is the raw size of the creature, dwarfing the already huge Colosseum, which doesn't even reach up to the knee of the beast, and its leg being thicker than an entire tower of the school by a considerable margin. Moving alone, causing building in the distance to shake. As if to hammer home just how much of a danger this is, Wahlberg speaks on how the monster could destroy a city in an instant, which isn't too much of a surprise seeing as it is already destroying buildings just by walking. Father, still yet to leave, turns back to look at Mash, commenting on how Mash seemed so confident before, so he should stop it if he can. And then turns back to leave, giving Mash one final word of how if someone without magic is even capable of such a feat, clearly egging him on to prove himself. And Wahlberg, of course, like any sensible person, can't believe that Mash would ever be capable of such a feat, with the difference in sheer power between him and the monster being too great. But we already know that Mash is a monster all on his own, so we the reader have nothing to fear. He won't lose to some no-named random behemoth. Back in the rest of the world, time begins to move again, and people start to return to consciousness, although they seemingly do realize that something happened, as one of them comments on how they felt like they were asleep, meaning that despite time being stopped, the after effects on those caught in the spell aren't non-existent. Of course, they don't have much time to consider this, as, of course, they catch sight of the monster and start panicking, right as it shoves its hand into the ground and rips up soil rock to throw at them. Someone correctly assumes that the creature is showing off for them. But before they could be turned into bloody puddles, Lance activates his gravity magic, catching them in midair, and comments on how his sister is always there when he needs her, referring to a previous seemingly flashback panel. Although Dot in all his glory decides to break the fourth wall and ask what was up with that cutscene, good to see that the story still isn't taking itself too seriously and isn't afraid to throw in a gag during what would otherwise be a very tense moment. But that isn't to say Dot isn't trying to help, as he sends forth his own attack, only for a magical circle to appear in front of the monster's head, completely blocking the spell. And Dot acknowledges that the monster pulled that barrier out of nowhere, which is both comedic but at the same time kind of strange. Was it really only for the sake of a gag, or is there a reason that this could only be done once all the monsters were combined? Well, Caldo gives us the answer quite swiftly, informing us that another magic user must be controlling the barrier, so they must find them first, otherwise their attacks will prove to be ineffective. Interesting to see that there is magic specialized in blocking other magic, considering that magic is seen as one of the key important things in this world. Having the ability to counter or block it would make you very powerful and very dangerous. I do wonder if that will get expanded upon. Although I'll admit I'm not holding my breath, seeing as there are still many other mysterious which have yet to get touched upon. But anyway, back in the chapter. Can't help but curse, as the person responsible is certain to be hiding and the monster is already upon them. Not helping the situation is the fact that the people in the stands, for all their bluster about Mash earlier, are screaming and begging to be saved. Just as the monster brings down its fist to crush them, it is suddenly halted, the advance completely stopped as the chain which wraps around its entire body is pulled taut, and even as it digs in its feet trying to advance, crushing the ground in the process, the monster still can't bring itself any further forwards. And at the other end of the chain, is none other than Mash, clutching onto the chain, digging his feet into the ground and refusing to let it go any further. The monster quite clearly takes offense to this and begins to grab and pull the chain towards itself, veins bulging on its arms and heads as it struggled to pull Mash towards itself. The students and other observers are quite obviously freaked out and terrified by the sight of Mash playing tug-of-war with a monster that dwarfs likely anything they have ever seen. Some of them then begin to have the gall to begin questioning if Mash has the right to be at the top of the school when he can't even use magic. One of the arrogant little snots even has the balls to say that Mash, a person without magic, has no place in this world, but those balls quickly shoot up inside him when the monster begins yelling. Half for all that bravado, you're all just cowards who can't do anything but hide behind your own arrogance, pathetic. And driving the point of Mash's superiority home is the fact that even as he clutches the chain, hands bleeding and chain cracking, Mash still doesn't let go. And finally, someone among the crowd comes to the realization of what is actually important here, not that Mash cannot use magic, but the fact he is trying to save the school, and soon their tones change to cheering Mash on. These people certainly switch sides quickly, not the sort of people you want watching your back. But then we move to Finn, for the first time in a little bit, acknowledging that in a world where magic is everything, where Mash was always on the verge of being expelled, he is changing the rules. That's a very hopeful statement. I hope it turns out to be true and they don't all just go back on this support, and I wonder how the other divine visionaries are going to respond to this upheaval of the established system. But either way, as Finn calls out to Mash, the young man gives a great heave, pulling the chain with all his might, lifting the monster up into the air and then swing it down, with the final scene of the chapter being the monster's heads getting smashed against the ground with tremendous force. I don't know if that would be enough to put it down for good, or if this is going to end up being a several chapters fight with Dot and the other trying to find the individuals still left behind to put the monster down for good. Either way, this shows everyone just what a terrifying beast Mash actually is, and it should, provided that the people have a brain, prevent anyone from trying to get Mash executed again, although I'm not holding my breath on the divine visionaries bending the knee to that choice, especially with Wahlberg seemingly being depowered now. But that's that. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, and if you want to see more of my ramblings, don't forget to subscribe. I have been the Anonymous Weeb, and I wish you a god day or night wherever you are.